You're standing in the grocery store with that little running total going in your head, not because you're some budgeting savant who color codes spreadsheets, because you genuinely don't know if the card's going to go through. So you put the name brand cereal back. You walk past the meat counter like you weren't going to buy any anyway. You decide you don't really like avocados. Then one day, years later, you're in that same store and you realize you just threw whatever you wanted into the cart without flinching. No running total, no spike of panic at checkout, and the strange part, nothing dramatic happened that week. Something just quietly shifted. Here's what nobody tells you about money. It doesn't get better gradually. It gets better in jumps. And here's the part that should scare you. If you don't know where those jumps are, you can earn more every single year and still feel exactly this stuck. There are 3 of them. Miss them, and a bigger paycheck just buys you a bigger version of the same fear. My name is Nick, and I spend an embarrassing amount of time thinking about money, specifically why some people feel completely broke at $200,000 a year and others feel free at $70,000. Today we're mapping the 3 exact points where life starts feeling different, and I'll warn you now, the third one breaks a rule you've believed your whole life, that more money always makes things better. Most people never even find out it's a rule. Hit subscribe so you're there when we get to it. But first, let me make this real, because numbers don't keep you up at night. People do, so meet Kyla. Kyla's not real, but you've met 100 Kylas. Maybe you shave in the mirror as one every morning. A few years ago, Kyla made $46,000 a year. On paper, that's a functioning adult with a job and a car and a kid. In practice, Kyla lived on a treadmill that kept quietly speeding up while she ran in place. Remember that treadmill? It's the villain of this entire video, and it's going to show up 3 separate times, each time a little faster. Here's the map for the next 20 minutes so you know where we're going. Each of the 3 levels kills exactly 1 fear. Level 1 kills the fear of drowning. Level 2 kills the fear of every little decision. And level 3 kills the deepest one of all, the fear of needing the next paycheck to survive. The dollar amounts are just the scaffolding. The fear that disappears is the actual story. So let's go find the first one. Level 1, the drowning line. Here's a Tuesday in Kyla's life at $46,000. She wakes up a few minutes before the alarm because her brain is already running the numbers. She skips the coffee she actually wants for the gas station one. At lunch, she checks her balance before she taps her card, and she does it with the phone tilted down so nobody at the table can see. That evening, her kid mentions a $35 field trip, and Kyla says, "We'll see," which they both already know means no, because $35 is the exact amount that has to stay in the account in case the check engine light comes on. She falls asleep doing math. That's not a budgeting problem. That's the drowning line, and most of this country lives directly on top of it. The median household in America makes about $83,700 a year, an all-time high, which sounds like wonderful news right up until you realize that the most money households have ever made still leaves the majority of them treading water. Here's the stat that should genuinely stop you cold. According to the Federal Reserve's own survey, only 63% of American adults could cover a surprise $400 expense using cash. And 1 in 8, roughly 13%, said they couldn't cover a $400 emergency by any means at all. Not with cash, not with a credit card, not by borrowing from a friend. $400, a car battery, a trip to urgent care, the thing the universe does to you on a random Tuesday. And it makes brutal sense when you see the other number. The median savings account in this country holds somewhere around $8,000. Not the rich people, not the broke people, the middle. $8,000 standing between the average household and total chaos. Meanwhile, about 62% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now, at the single richest moment in recorded human history. Sure, 73% will tell a surveyor they're doing okay financially, but that number's slipping, and doing okay is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Doing okay is what you say when nothing is technically on fire, but you haven't looked at your savings on purpose in a while. Cool system. Love it. So, level 1 was never about getting rich. Level 1 is about getting your head above water, and for a single person in a normal cost part of the country, That line sits somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000. For a family of four, it's more like $90,000 to $100,000, which you'll notice is right around the national median. So the median American family is balanced on the exact line between drowning and breathing, and where you live cranks the difficulty knob hard. The median household in Mississippi makes about $59,000. In Massachusetts, it's nearly $114,000. Same country, same Netflix price, same $14 sad airport sandwich, and a $55,000 gap in whether you're underwater. Now watch what happens when Kyla finally crosses the line. She claws her way to $58,000. Not life-changing money, just a couple of raises and a slightly better job. But suddenly, there's a small pile of cash sitting in an account that exists for exactly one purpose: absorbing the universe's punches. The $400 emergency stops being apocalyptic and starts being merely annoying. She stops doing math at the gas pump. The field trip is just a yes. That's the entire prize at level 1. Not a boat, not a vacation, the ability to exhale. And if that sounds depressingly small to you, yeah, it is, but for 2/3 of the country, it's the single most important raise they will ever get. Here's the trap, though, the one nobody warns Kyla about. The treadmill heard she got a raise, and it's already speeding up. Level 2, when the decision tax disappears. Remember that $75,000 number? The one everyone quoted for a solid decade. Money can't buy happiness past 75 grand? Yeah, about that. It came from a real 2010 study by two serious researchers, Kahneman and Deaton, who found that your day-to-day emotional well-being climbed with income until about $75,000 and then sort of flattened out. The internet, being the internet, immediately printed that on 1,000 motivational mugs and stopped reading. But then in 2021, a researcher named Killingsworth pinged people on their phones in real time, instead of asking them to remember how they felt later, and found no plateau at all. Happiness just kept climbing with income. Two famous studies, opposite answers, academia's favorite kind of bar fight. So in 2023, they did the thing adults almost never do. They teamed up and figured out they were both half right. For most people, happiness keeps rising with income well past $75,000. No plateau. The flattening only showed up for the unhappiest slice of people, and even for them, only after about $100,000, and that original $75,000 from 2010. Adjusted for inflation, it's about $110,000 in today's money. The magic number didn't disappear. It just grew up and moved into six figures, which is exactly where Kyla is heading. She grinds for years and claws her way to $118,000, a real career now, business cards, the whole thing, and she crosses the second line, the one where money stops being a daily decision. I call this one the decision tax, and at level 1, you pay it constantly. Groceries or the dentist, new tires or the field trip. At level 2, that tax just evaporates. You go to the dentist, you don't hold a tiny referendum about it first. Here's Kyla's Tuesday now. She buys the coffee she actually wants and doesn't log it anywhere. The dishwasher dies and it's a phone call, not a 5-alarm crisis. The field trip permission slip gets signed at the kitchen counter in about 4 seconds. The retirement money leaves her account automatically and she genuinely forgets the number. She still works hard, she's just no longer negotiating with herself at every single checkout. Level 2 doesn't make you rich, it makes you unbothered, and unbothered is wildly criminally underrated. This is the income people instinctively reach for when you ask them what secure actually feels like. When Bankrate surveyed Americans, 45% said they'd need a 6-figure income just to feel comfortable. And when Empower asked people what salary would make them outright happy, the average answer came back around $284,000, which mostly proves that our finish line always sits a cozy 2 to 3 times beyond wherever we happen to be standing. But here's the ambush waiting at this level. And yeah, it's the treadmill again, faster this time. The costs that hit you at level 2 are completely unhinged. Childcare for one kid averages over $13,000 a year. 2 kids? You're looking at close to $28,000. A second mortgage that happens to wear tiny shoes. Family health insurance now runs about $27,000 a year, and even with your employer covering most of it, you're personally handing over almost $7,000 of that. And to afford a median-priced home in 2026, you need to earn roughly $111,000. And even then, you'd be spending nearly 45% of your income on it, which is wildly above the 30% the experts swear is healthy. To put a finer point on it, there are only about 11 major housing markets left where a median income household can actually afford the median home. Back in 2020, that number was 39. So in the span of a few years, the map of places a normal family can buy a normal house lost 3/4 of its pins. And here's the cruelest twist of all. Gross income is a fantasy number. Nobody actually lives on their salary. They live on whatever's left after the government takes its cut. That $100,000 job, in a no-income tax state like Texas, you're taking home around $74,000 after federal taxes and payroll. In California, knock off several thousand more. So 6 figures lands in your actual hand as more like 74 grand. And that's the money the rent, the daycare, and the insurance are all coming out of. So when somebody hits $120,000 and feels weirdly stretched instead of thriving, it isn't because they're bad with money. It's because the price of admission to a normal middle-class life quietly doubled, and nobody bothered to reprint the brochure. Which brings us to the level almost nobody actually reaches, and the one that honestly broke my brain a little when I finally understood it. Before you click off thinking this last part doesn't apply to you, it does. It changes how you should think about every raise for the rest of your life. Level 3, when work becomes optional. Let's talk percentiles because they're genuinely wild. To crack the top 10% of American households by income in 2025, you need to make about $251,000. Top 5%, that's $335,000, and the top 1% doesn't even start until around $659,000. So when somebody pulling $300,000 tells you they don't feel rich, they're not crazy and they're not lying. They're just standing at the bottom of a very tall ladder staring up. But here's the thing that took me embarrassingly long to understand. Level 3 isn't really about income at all, it's about assets. The difference between someone earning $250,000 and someone who is actually free isn't the salary. It's whether their money makes money while they sleep. And once you start measuring by what people own instead of what they earn, the numbers get even more vertical. The threshold just to crack the top 10% by net worth has climbed to around $1.8 million. The top 1%, you're talking north of $13 million. These aren't doctor with a nice house numbers anymore. This is a different financial universe with its own gravity, and the entrance fee keeps quietly going up. This is where the famous 4% rule comes in. Back in 1994, a financial planner named William Bengen ran the numbers and found that if you've got a big enough pile of invested money, you can pull out about 4% of it every year, basically forever, without running dry. And a study out of Trinity University later broadly backed him up. Flip it around and you get the rule of 25. You need roughly 25 times your annual spending invested to be financially independent. So if your life costs $80,000 a year, you need about $2 million invested. At that point, your money generates your paycheck. You don't. Fair warning, by the way. Like, some researchers now argue the safe number is closer to 3%, and Bengen himself later nudged his up. The point isn't the exact decimal. The point is that there's a number and it's built out of assets, not salary. And this is the part that quietly explains why the rich pull away while everyone else runs in place. The treadmill, one last time, now at a full sprint. The wealthiest 10% of households own more than 87% of all the stocks in the entire country. Over the last 5 years, the stock market climbed something like 109%, while the typical home went up around 25%. So if your money was sitting in a checking account, you got the 25% world at best. If your money was invested and working for you, you got the 109% world. Same 5 years, different planet. That's not a conspiracy. It's just what happens when your money has a full-time job and you're not the only one in the household earning. Now, here's where I have to be straight with you, because this is the rule I promised would break. Once you're past this point, money basically stops reducing your stress. Think about it. You already killed the grocery fear at level 1, the decision tax at level 2, and dependence on the next paycheck right here at level 3, there's no fourth fear left for money to slay. So what does the extra money buy instead? Time. There's a great study from 2017 that found people who spend money to buy back their own hours, can count on paying someone to clean, to cook, to handle the stuff they hate, end up measurably happier. Not happier because they're rich, happier because they bought back their own Tuesday, which is exactly where Kyla finally lands. She's not on a yacht. She's at her kitchen table on a Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon, working because she wants to, not because the mortgage is due Friday. That's the whole game right there. Rich is a number. Wealthy is a Tuesday afternoon that nobody owns but you. But Nick, I know rich people who are broke. Yeah, you do. And so do I. So let's deal with it, because this is the objection that blows up the whole income levels idea if I dodge it. You're sitting there thinking, Nick, this is nonsense because I know people pulling $200,000 who are stressed out of their skulls, and I know people on $70,000 who seem totally fine. And you're right. Here's the uncomfortable proof. About 44% of people earning over $100,000 a year still live paycheck to paycheck. There's even data suggesting around 40% of people making over $500,000 feel like they can't get ahead. $500,000. So what on earth is going on? 2 words: lifestyle creep, the treadmill in its final, most cunning form. Every time your income climbs, your necessities mysteriously climb to match it. The raise becomes a nicer car. The bonus becomes a bigger house with a bigger everything inside it. Luxuries quietly reclassify themselves as requirements until you're earning 3 times what you used to and feeling exactly as broke as the day you started. Which means the real prize was never the income at all. It was the gap. The space between what you earn and what you spend. A disciplined household at $70,000 that keeps its life modest can genuinely feel freer than a chaotic one at $200,000 drowning in payments, and where you live still rewrites everything. $150,000 makes you comfortably upper middle class in Mississippi and merely getting by in San Francisco, where a single adult needs nearly $159,000 just to live comfortably. Same number, completely different life. And here's the part that surprised me most. When researchers actually ask people what makes them feel financially happy, the top answers aren't some giant net worth. They're paying your bills on time and being debt-free. So the fear you're really trying to kill at every level isn't, I don't have enough. It's, I'm not in control. Money buys control, but so does spending less than you make. And that one is available today. No raise required. So let me give you permission to do something the entire money influencer machine will absolutely hate. Stop chasing a number. Start chasing a fear. Figure out which of these 3 is actually running your life right now, the drowning, the decision tax, or the paycheck leash, and aim everything you've got at killing that one specific thing. Because the jump that changes your life isn't $80,000 to $90,000. It's the day the running total in your head finally goes quiet. And if you're sitting there feeling behind, like everyone else cracked some code you somehow missed, I need you to hear this. The reason $100,000 doesn't feel the way it used to is not that you're failing. It's that prices are up about 25% since 2020, and every single one of these thresholds climbed right along with them. You're not running slower, the treadmill sped up and forgot to tell you. So picture Kyla one last time. Same fluorescent grocery store, same squeaky cart with the one bad wheel. Only now she's not adding anything up. She reaches for the cereal she actually wants, the good coffee, the avocados she spent years pretending not to like. And she just keeps walking, no running total, no spike at checkout. Nothing dramatic happens, something just finally goes quiet. That quiet is the whole prize, not the boat, not the number, the silence where the fear used to be. First you stop drowning, then you stop deciding. Then, if you guard that gap patiently enough, you stop depending, and your money quietly starts buying back your afternoons. That's the level actually worth chasing. not the one with the biggest number on it, the one where the only math you've got left is figuring out how you want to spend a Tuesday. I'll see you in the next one.